Hey everybody, Red Mage here. Welcome back to the series where I go through different RPG products that I have and give them a quick flip through and review. In this video, I'm going to be going through a collection of a whole bunch of different things that I've been sent over the past couple of months. Some people have sent me things hoping that I would take a look at them. Some people have sent me things as thank yous for the channel, I guess. You know, people will say, hey, I wanted to support you for what you're doing, so here's a free PDF. A couple people have sent me free books. It's kind of hard for me to review those in this sort of grab bag way because I have to get my camera set up differently. But at some point, I'm going to do a review of physical books again. But for now, I wanted to cover kind of in a big grab bag video a whole bunch of the things that I've been sent. Now, this is not everything I've been sent over the last couple of months. Some of them I want to maybe break out into maybe more specific videos because I've been sent some pretty cool stuff. But for this one, I wanted to pick the smaller things or the things that didn't fit so well into other like 3-set videos and put them all together. And, you know, I'll admit some of these I'm kind of looking at for the first time. Now, I've looked through them. I've read through what they are. I've looked at some of the highlights, but I haven't read them in detail. So this is going to be kind of more of like a flip through and an impression and getting you guys, you know, some information. So if it seems interesting to you, if any of these products seem interesting to you, you can look and, you know, and grab them and see if they're of interest to you. I'll put links below to where you can get them if I can find them. Again, some of them have just sent them to me through email, and so I don't want to just put the link to the actual file, right? So if I can find a good place you can pick it up, I'll put a link below. Now the first one here is the Chateau Amongst the Stars. Now this is probably going to be a lot of things, and so it'll probably be a bit of a longer video, guys. And I'll put timestamps below to where you can jump to the different books here. But the first, as I said, is the Chateau Amongst the Stars. This is a Shadow Dark adventure for level 6 or 7, so it's a little bit higher. The design here is really pretty. It's not that long of a book. It's only 36 pages. This is by Anthony Zinni, it looks like. Where possible, I'll try to use the company name here, but I think that the company name is named on the back. Let me see. Yeah, this is Revivify Games, and it looks like you can go to revivifygames.com and check out more. But the Chateau Among the Stars is a Shadow Dark adventure, as I said, and it's laid out in a really cool way. I have read through this one just a little bit. This deals with the Kytherian cog and Kytherian mechanism thing, which I think is a really cool element from the Shadow Dark game, cool magic items. Deals with void. There's some good art in here. It looks like the art is taken, at least in some cases, it looks like it's taken from kind of like licensed art, right? So you pay a bit and you can have access to this art. I don't know if it's all made exactly for this adventure. I could be wrong, but it looks like that sort of. It often looks like that art that you get from other things. But again, I could be wrong about that. Map here is great. It's a cool little asteroid, or an island, I guess, floating through the void. One of the things I really like about this is that it makes use of the different... It's very faithful to the Shadow Dark actual terminology, right? Safe and unsafe sort of thing. The rules for random encounters are as Shadow Dark written. And that's cool. It seems like it's a pretty open adventure, right? If you're coming onto this island, there's a lot of different places you could go, so it's not like you're kind of locked in to one particular place. This is kind of an interesting way of putting out these region map events. It's like almost, well, it says the following events occur while exploring the island. They're only noticed by the characters while outside the chateau. The GM should track each round, revealing the scripted events instead of random encounters. For purposes of simplicity, ignore any round spent while the characters rest. So there's sort of, as things happen, you can kind of either check them off or just keep track of them as they go. That's pretty cool. I like that. You get some trolls here, a bottle gnome, Mama Scruggs, Myrus. Pretty cool, really cool actually piece of art right there. I like that. The pencil shading is really cool. And the outline of these pieces of art, they've been put into this sort of like outline with maybe a nebulous void out. It's really cool, and it adds to a kind of a character for this. This seems like an independent production, but the details on the map pages and things like that, or on the sides of the pages, are quite beautiful, and they give me an impression of a level of it raises the level of the quality quite a bit. I'm a big fan of this. The map of the dungeon also is quite open, the floor plan. Right, it reminds me of, actually, the map from, oh goodness, The Waking of Willoughby Hall, just in how open it is. This is the main floor of the dungeon. Right, you can pretty much go anywhere if you pick the right door and you take the right turn. That's cool. That's really cool. It means there's multiple routes through this place. Most of the rooms have multiple ways in, although I can see a couple that only have one way in. But for the most part, you're going through these rooms and connecting. That's really, really cool. Some riddles. A Midnight Stalker. It's a really cool creature. And you get the second floor, the east wing, second floor, west wing, with a sub-basement as well. This is really cool. It's laid out really, really well. It looks like a really interesting adventure. From what I can see here is you're stepping through this portal and you're in this, well, it says a mansion made of exotic stone and surrounded by ornate sculptures. The wind moves silently, yet the clouds sit frozen in the sky. This is super cool. This is super cool. So the Chateau amongst the stars. It's interesting because the interior and the cover give me a very kind of jarred feeling. The interior feels very different than the cover. The cover makes it feel like it's going to be something different. I don't know, whether it's that electric kind of spark and the looks of the ruins in front of that guy, it's sort of techy. And the inside doesn't give me that impression. It feels more magic-y. But again, I will say for all of these, I haven't read them super detailed. But this one is one that I think I will, and probably feature this in another review where I've actually done a full kind of investigation of it, because it's really cool. The Chateau amongst the stars. I had seen another person on YouTube post a review of it. I haven't actually watched their review of it, but I saw that it was out there already. Someone else thought that this was a cool adventure to review too. So anyway, if it seems of interest to you guys, and I think any Shadow Dark adventure that you can find out there is a good thing, but especially one that is proficiently put together, that has good maps, that is open in its design, and that's for a little higher level. This is level 6 or 7, which is unusual. Most of the time you get level 1 through maybe level 4 adventures. Occasionally you'll get level 5 adventures. But for 6 and 7, that's a little high. Considering Shadow Dark caps out at 10, that's cool. So, Chateau amongst the stars, really worth checking out. Yeah, from what I can see, solid A plus on the presentation there. Really cool. Another one here is Against the Cult of the Crimson Hand. Now this one had a cover, but it was in a separate file. I could have added it into the PDF. I didn't really think to do that. I should have. But this is by William Harshman, or Runeforge Tabletop Gaming. There's a link, hyperlinked right there. You can go right to the YouTube table for his channel. This is a one-shot adventure for first, second level characters with optional rules for less lethal new player experience. Okay, I have read through this one a tiny bit too. And it's laid out in the classic Shadow Dark way. The font choice, the way that the pages are laid out, the kind of art that's used, the way that again the actual entries are presented. You get the bullet points, you get the random encounter descriptions, all of that. It is very faithful to the classic Shadow Dark look. It fits in with all of the other kind of Shadow Dark adventures in terms of presentation. So that's cool. That's cool. You get some stretched art there. It's not my favorite. But you get some stat blocks on the page, which is really good. I always like that. Lots of stat blocks, lots of creatures. And then you get the Mistress of Pain. Again, it looks like... yeah, you get the map at the end. And I think the map also... Well, this is one that was sent to my email, and it came, I think, with the map file separately too. Now, if you can look here, you can see that the dungeon is laid out. There's one entrance, it looks like, but then there's several paths through the dungeon. So you can go to 2, you can go straight to 7, you can go to 3, you can go to 5. It's kind of laid out in a very, I would say, traditional way. It's nothing super shocking here in terms of the layout, but it looks like there's a secret door from 10 on, which is really cool. Yeah, and it has the Taylor Seeley Wright layout which is what I used for my own adventure, the Blessed and the Beast. So this looks really cool. It looks, again, like it's a pretty straightforward cult adventure. You're dealing with, cult acolytes. We've seen cults a lot, but hey, cults are great. And it looks like this one's designed with new players in mind. And so you're trying to keep things at a certain sort of difficulty. So that makes sense to me. There's some cool extra rules here as well. So against the Cult of the Crimson Hand, it seems cool. It seems cool. I mean, it's another one of those adventures where you throw it into an ongoing game, or you play it as a one-shot, or whatever it might be. That's cool. More stuff released for Shadow Dark is good in my book. Runeforged Tabletop Gaming also sent me Shadows of Camelot, which is a bigger product. It's a bigger thing. This one is a setting that kind of draws in the traditional Arthurian saga. This is really cool. Again, it's for Shadow Dark here. In this legal page, you get the inspiration here, which has some pretty cool inspirations. Last Crusade, Merlin, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Excalibur, and the Green Knight. So with those inspirations, you kind of know what you're getting. So it's an interesting transposition. Shadow Dark in the Arthurian saga. I think, is this the second Arthurian Shadow Dark adventure that I've read? Yeah, I think that's right. I think PhD and D did a Shadow Dark Arthurian adventure that I reviewed a while back, now that it comes to mind. So you've got the traditional influences here. The art in this book is great. It has that very much high romance Arthurian vibe, which I'm a big fan of. And there's more. You can go to the Runeforged Gaming for more stuff here. So it's a human-centric campaign setting for Shadow Dark RPG designed to take characters from level 1 to 10. So it's a whole campaign, really, rather than just a setting, although it is also a setting. Some liberties with the source materials to better blend the settings. That's pretty cool. Shadows of Camelot. It reminds me of Shadows over Camelot. I don't know. That was an old board game. I think it was called Shadows over Camelot, which was a really cool board game where you all played knights in the Arthurian court, but one of you could be a traitor. And I think it was sort of secretly determined who the traitor might be. And sometimes there wasn't a traitor. And then you had to try to complete quests, and the traitor was trying to bring down the round table, or the court. Really cool. It seems pretty faithful for the most part to the Arthurian saga, although, again, given twists here and there. Robin Hood thrown in there, too. The Inquisition of St. Pyre, which is a new thing. This is one of those books where I think, draw heavily from it for inspiration from your own games. Great map here. I'm sure somewhere he says how he made this. I might have missed it. Let's see, I'm going to go back here. Oh, the Albion Hex map was just made by... just made by him. It doesn't really say if there was a program used. There might be one in there, but I don't see it because that's a cool map. It looks like a program, and it looks like a map style that I've seen elsewhere, but I can't put my finger on what. So it's an actual campaign with acts as it's laid out, as you guys can see. And that's interesting. It seems much more structured in that regard than a sort of just generic, or not generic, but it's sort of a general setting where, hey, you can go here, you can go there, here's this, that, or the other thing. I tend to find my preference, and this is no surprise if you guys have watched my channel for a while, I tend to be more of a setting person, a sandbox, open world kind of game. I like West Marches. If I'm going to do a campaign, I like West March style campaigns. I do like some more structured campaigns, but even then, like I did Curse of Strahd, and that's a pretty structured campaign, but even there, I kind of opened it up into a sort of West Marches. When they finally got to Vallaki in that campaign, there was like 6 different leads that they could have taken, and they all went to different areas, and they all had their own quests and things going on there, and I was prepared to go anywhere. And so, in that sense, it was a bit more yeah, like the players did follow a pretty traditional path. Barovia Town, Svarepool Falls, Valaki, Kresik, Yesterhill, back to Kresik, Abbey of St. Markovia, back to Valaki, up to Castle Ravenloft. Like, it was very boom, 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 boom. It felt very much by the book. But really, it was wide open, and they could have gone anywhere. I tend to prefer that sort of campaign. So one where it's very structured by acts, even, is something that I haven't. I'll be honest, I haven't done it very much. So maybe I would find it to be more to my taste if I were to do it. Get some cool encounter tables here. And then points of interest. Now this is more my style, because points of interest are things that you can just steal for your own games. And there's a nice hex crawl here, so even if you didn't want to follow the story as the acts are laid out, it seems like you could just kind of run this setting as a setting and come up with your own adventures and add things in, or again, take from this for your own games. Lots of cool locations. One thing that I wish more people did, and I can understand it is tricky. I'm developing my own for a while now. It's been on the back burner for a long time, but I'm developing that sort of inspired by the Legend of Zelda setting book, adventure book. And one of the things I'm trying to do is put more maps onto more pages so that you can get a sense always of where you are when things are being described. And that can be tricky, but I think it's worth the effort. It's one of the recommendations I would give to generally people making setting books whenever you're describing hexes or when you're going through a long period of, like a long list of descriptions of different places. Giving an indication of where those are again. Maybe even just giving a hex number, but putting the map there on the page. Whatever it might be. Hyperlinking it, which this is hyperlinked by page, and that's great. But hyperlinking this to the particular location on the map. Now, if you go all the way back to the map, you can see that these are on there. So it's not, it's not impossible to just kind of flip a few pages. So don't get me wrong, it's not the end of the world. But I think that would be a cool thing for people to start doing. Put more maps. I like maps. And if it's a few extra pages, most of the time, I don't think that's a problem. Even repeating maps that you've already presented, just more closer to where you're reading. I think that'd be cool. But again, it's one of those things where you just open up a second copy and you keep the map open. If you have to. It's not the end of the world. It looks cool, I have to say. So I haven't looked through this a ton, besides flipping through, seeing the major sections, and looking at some of the, reading some of the writing, basically trying to get a sense of the whole. But it's cool, and I like the optional rules that are presented here. So the optional rules that are more in keeping with an Arthurian tone. So for example, carousing fits with a particular kind of game. But if you're going to shift the tone to Arthurian, high romance, chivalric, adventure, then you probably need a different kind of carousing. So offering charity, that's cool. Also, had to read through the monster manuals. Always a fan of more monsters. And here you get more monsters. Now you get some things that are like things in the main book, but you also get new stuff. You get Sir Lancelot, for example, who's also the Black Knight. Cath Palug, an immense supernatural feline that stalks the mystical Feywood, preceded by sinister, concealing mist. You get some centaurs, Cernak the Horned Prince, Cernak's advisor, also Gora, Cernak's hunters, the Chalice Knight. I love the Arthurian saga. It's so good. And some Fey stat blocks. I might steal these for my Dolmenwood game, straight up. This piece of art for the Ghost I just saw for the Banshee in another book that I was reading. So definitely the art has been taken from one of those packages, right? Licensed art. And that's great. I've talked about this before, but public domain art, licensed art, it's just preferable in my mind to AI art. And there was just this wave. One of the reasons, and I'll be honest, guys, one of the reasons I stopped reviewing a lot of free books on DTRPG and itch.io is because so many of them were just full of AI. And I'm not one of those people who's like, I know there are people who are literally like, I will not touch a book that has AI in it. I'm not like that. I see some uses of it. that I don't hate. I see some uses of it that I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'm not personally for AI, but even in my own adventure, I used AI to help generate a poem because I was like, I can't come up with a whole poem for this, but I want a poem, so I gave it like, you know, this is what I want the poem to be about. This is I want these elements to it, and it just developed a poem for me. I'm like, that sort of AI use seems fine to me, but books that just like have leaned right into it and like, hey, everything, we're gonna use all the AI art. We're gonna use AI art for every monster, and we're gonna use like I kickstarted a couple books 2 years ago when the AI wave was really hitting, was really cresting, and things like Midjourney were becoming really available. And I just have to say, I'm so tired of the AI art look. I'm so tired of it already. And so I just don't want to review those books. There's so many of them that are like, hey, it might even be decent adventures. But I'd rather take like little scratch art. I'd rather take stick figure art at this point than a lot of the AI art, just because it isn't even neutral. It's actually kind of off-putting. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, I promise. So you get a lot of cool stat blocks in this book. But I really especially like the bosses, or like the Black Knight or the Chalice Knight. Like, I like those sorts of stat blocks because they're more special. They have some extra abilities, and those are the things that you really need, right? A standard stat block like, well, a ghoul we've seen before, but let me even take something like, a Fey Guard. The Fey Guard has this Guardian ability, and that's cool, but the stat block itself is pretty standard. It's something that we can develop very easily. And you can see that with all of these. The Centaur, the Boar. The Centaur is the one here that doesn't really have an extra ability. I would always give it an extra ability. I like things that, if you're gonna create the stat block, because the stat block itself from Shadow Dark is so easy, give it something that makes it a little bit more oomph. Give it a little more oomph. Most of the monsters in here do have that, which is really cool. Really, really cool. Especially things like the Druid and then the Chalice Knight, or those boss monsters. And the Chalice Knight is a good example of this. So it's immune to morale checks, only damaged by magical sources, hostile spells, DC 15 to cast. Pretty powerful right there. But then you also get Aegis. +2 shield. Once a day, creatures within close affected by protection from evil for 3 rounds. That's cool. Then you get the Chalice Knight's Blade, the +3 longsword. Deals double damage against chaotic creatures, but half damage against everything else. That's also really cool. And then Purify. Galahad can purify a corrupted magical item he touches, removing any curses associated with it. Great. So you have a sense of who Galahad is, if you didn't know him already. And much of his magic comes from his equipment, the Aegis and the Blade. But still, that's cool. So, monsters, big fan of monsters. You get Friar Tuck in here. You get the Merry Men, Alana Dale, or Alana Dale. That's funny. Little John, Lord Robert, Robin Hood himself, Much Millerson, Nazim, Will Scarlet. That's Nazim. He's that's heavily influenced or drawn from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. What kind of a name is Kazim or Hazim anyway? Irish? Scottish? Moorish. That's it. Yeah, that movie it's kind of overrated and not under. It's kind of underrated and also ridiculous. I think it has kind of a ridiculous reputation, but I actually like it. Alan Rickman's performance in it is so over the top. And the accent game is just so bad from so many of the characters. Kevin Costner's English accent is just terrible. But Morgan Freeman's great, and Alan Rickman is, again, over the top, delicious as a bad guy like that. And there's a lot of good scenes, and the music is decent. So I don't know, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I actually like it. But I'm a big fan of like B fantasy and bad fantasy and medieval fantasy. Like I used to in college, and just after college, my friends and I would do B fantasy movie night, or like, Z fantasy movie. Like we would get like really low quality fantasy movies, and we'd just get a bunch of beer and we'd like watch and just laugh. And I developed a fondness for a lot of those old movies. Like I don't know how many people have actually seen movies like Hawk the Slayer these days. But I have, and I actually kind of like Hawk the Slayer, and the Beastmaster, right, and Krull, and these definitely lower tier Deathstalker and the Sword and the Sorcerer, like things that I think a lot of people just haven't seen, and I can't recommend them exactly, but I like them. Morgana Le Fay, Mordred the Ascended. Having drunk deeply from the divine chalice, Mordred has returned with godlike power. Well, that's interesting, right? So there are certainly some changes to the standard Arthurian saga here. Get some cool magic items. Wow, a lot of cool magic items. And it's interesting here, so you have like Ramlot's Fury, and that's Ramlot is from the Shadowdark books. So there's a mix of Arthurian and the actual Shadowdark gods and things like that. And at the end you get this adventure. So it's interesting. It is a setting book. I'm going back a bit. If you go to the acts, they do seem pretty loose. And I see, that the advice here is it can be played as a sandbox. You have the option of running a more narrative campaign if you desire. And if you do run it as a sort of narrative campaign, it's going to be like after you go here, this is the sort of thing that's going to start happening. So maybe it's up to you how you want to play that. But this is cool. Again, I think this is a really cool product. Shadows of Camelot. I'm a big fan of this. It's a good take on the Arthurian saga, and most of this book is locations, monster manuals, magic items. That is cool. One of the things that I'm a little bit unhappy about this. Most people who are making settings and stuff for Shadowdark spend about half the book with new classes and new ancestries. And it's like, that's just the least interesting new thing you can add to a game, because new classes are never balanced. And the balance actually does matter, especially in a game with as low numerical modifiers as Shadowdark has. Balance does matter. You can easily overpower things, and you can easily make classes that are just worthless. And so having new classes is very rarely of value to me. And ancestries are so easy to make because you just come up with a description and then give them ability. But so many settings have just most of it as, Anyway, so this is mostly encounters, locations, monsters, and magic, with an extra couple of adventures and a history at the very end. This is really cool. This is what more setting books should be like, for Shadowdark or for any system. Let's move away from the new classes and the new ancestries. You can just do those at home. If you're going to put a new setting out there, it should be the new setting, and not just, kind of cobbled together classes that ultimately you can mostly do at home. But anyway, Shadows of Camelot, very good, very cool. The Bride of Sinners Crypt. I love the art already. It looks like the knight in front. He looks like a character from Over the Garden Wall, which immediately makes me like it. It's a great piece of art there, a great introduction to this adventure. It's a level 3 Shadowdark adventure, has new classes and new spells. I just finished saying how I don't want a whole bunch of new classes. This was developed for the Weird Tales Game Jam. The fact that it spends time in that on new classes is quite interesting. Information here on the crypt. You get some brides that are required for that crypt. Most recent Lord Abductee now lies in a magical sleep. This adventure really coolly uses an actual timer. This adventure operates under the pressure of an 8-hour time limit, 480 minutes. That's it. So you can scrap this, but it's Shadowdark, and it's trying to lean into the things that make Shadowdark interesting, one of which is the actual timer. Now again, this is funny because I like that idea. It's not something that I actually use at my table. Most of the time I don't have the actual timer. I don't use the always on timer for torches, for example. But I can see the value of it at times, and I've certainly come across circumstances where I've been like, man, maybe I should do that. The layout is different, and the design is different than the standard Shadowdark layout and design as well. It has more of a unique look. It's a little too cramped. I would like it. It looks like there's extra space on pages. I'd like maybe just open up the font a bit, or put in art or maps. In fact, I think maps would be the way to go, because it looks like there's extra blank space on like almost every page. You get a couple extra classes at the end. So it looks like an interesting adventure here. Now, I might be crazy. Yeah, there are no maps in the book. I actually, now that I think about it, I'm sure that I got a map in the file pack when I was sent this. But there is no map in the book, which I think there should be maps in the book. But that's just, you know, I wouldn't even say a nitpick. It's just a different design choice. There's a lot that I like about this. It's one of those adventures where I think a lot of it seems like stuff we've seen. But there's also a lot of interesting new additions in terms of choices. You get different approaches to the different rooms. And I like the layout of the rooms. It's pretty clear what's actually going on in each of them. So, you know, if you take BL2, for example, you just get a description of the room. If Mortimer is with the group, Moridmir is with the group and in control, he will seal the group within and flee. A random encounter and a trap. If Dionor is with the group and in control, he will hurriedly tell the group to read and ask them to end his life to spare his brother's victims. And then what do you see? Large imposing bookshelf against the wall. Strange items are scattered on the journal tables and a dark little journal. What's on the bookshelf if you investigate with the magnifying glass? So you look a little closer. And then, okay, what about the strange items? Again, you get more detail. So it's cool in the way that it's laid out. You have what you initially see and then indications of what you'll see if you get a little closer. So I like that. It's cool. The art on the front page is good, and the art you get throughout the book is also good. I wish there were some more. And again, there's enough empty space that it seems like you could just put the maps or some maps on the pages, or more art or something like that. But again, this was designed for the game jam, and so I think some of those details are going to be as a result of that. But it certainly is much more unique looking than a lot of those game jam adventures. I like that cover a lot. I keep coming back to it, but I really do. So this is cool. I think this is another good one. Again, I'll put links below where you guys can get all these. But this one seems like an interesting Crypt adventure. I think we've seen a lot of Crypts, we've seen a lot of cults, but hey, there's nothing wrong with another one. Well, again, I think you guys should check this one out. Bride of the Sinner's Crypts. And I want to say thanks to everybody for sending me these. These are really cool. The Old Blood, this is another one. This is by Doomed Zone. This is one I will admit I have not really had a chance to look at beyond just a kind of a brief flip through. What I can see is that it looks like most of the pages are either, I think it's AI art, maybe it's, it looks like AI art, but maybe it's some public domain art that's been modified. But the text has been put over it. And it has this kind of like clipped out look, right? Like it's designed to look like you've clipped these out of magazines or something like that. And I've seen that before. You see that with kind of a punky look. It doesn't tend to be my favorite unless there's a really good reason for it. And this one has a pretty good reason for it, because this is an investigation. And so it's like a notebook, right? It's like you're cutting open and opening up this book, and you're pasting these texts onto the page. And so it actually does fit with the tone of the adventure itself. Sometimes I've seen people use it just strictly for kind of like a visual effect. That's probably why it's generally done. But this one at least has that connection, and I like that a lot. It makes it feel more real. And it also feels like something you'd put in your notebook from high school, right? Or something like that. Like you'd actually develop your adventure, paste it in your binder. And I like adventures that feel like that. So this one looks like it's dealing with vampires, right? Murders with puncture marks in the necks. You get a lot of text in the introduction, leaning into things. A murder check table. I'm always a fan of murder check tables. But you get who or what is being murdered as the nights go on. You get a chance of different people being murdered and where they're murdered and how they're murdered. and essentially you're trying to figure it out and, you know, deal with it. You get different characters, different monsters. The Forgotten, a greater undead. It's a vampire. Once again, it might be nice to have some maps early on, but you get some good encounter tables here. You got the city of Branham, which is a pretty big city. And this is one of those ones where you can easily take this, put it into your own setting, because there are details given, but the details aren't hyper setting specific. So you could easily fit this into almost any world or setting that you want. It has a pretty good breakdown of the town and the different parts of it, with some good descriptions of different particular places within those regions. It's marked off pretty well. It looks like a very big town, a very big city. Yeah. Once again, I'm liking this. The AI art is in the background, and it's used as sort of almost just used as like filler to distract the eye and to have something in the background. You might as well, you could have just used like, you know, blank or black or something like that. But because you have some more visual interest there, that's cool. And again, I say AI art, it might just be, it might not be. I think it is. Yeah, AI art often has that look about it. But I don't know. Yeah, this one's definitely AI art, I would say. You get the sewers beneath the city. It's an interesting sewer map, I have to say. Looks like you're going to be looping around. Yeah, it's pretty much a loop with a few side tunnels, a few side branches. And there's different subsections that you can end up in, go to, beneath the whole city. There's a lot going on down there. A lot of different places to go. It's actually kind of a huge dungeon. Yeah, catacombs and all of that. Going deep, deep, deep. I like this a lot. Now, really, in a really cool way, at the very end, this is all the free, all the work here is under CC01, which means it's all, you can take it and modify it and even commercially use all of the original work in this adventure, which is really cool. So thank you to Doomzone for doing all that work, again, putting it out there for free and letting people, like if you wanted, you could copy this and then sell it, which is kind of crazy, at least a lot of the text. Or, I mean, copy it, put your own spin on it, you know, and sell it without even attribution. And that's pretty generous. So thank you to Doomzone for that. It looks like a lot of work went into this. It has a really cool vibe. The adventure itself seems pretty interesting with this sort of, you know, investigation of these murders that lead you down into the sewers, and then you eventually fight the vampire. That's cool. So I recommend you guys check out The Old Blood. That's sweet. All right, I have two back-to-back, which are from Andrea Tupac Malika, who has been kind enough to send other things in the past that I've reviewed before. And if you guys know Andrea's work, then you'll know there's a lot of really interesting aspects to these adventures. One of the things that these two books that I've been given here, one of the fascinating elements of them is that they include one-on-one adventures, which is really uncommon. I haven't seen that very much, one-on-one adventures. Now, I haven't played one-on-one adventures since, like, after high school. No, it was during high school. Yeah, during high school was the last time I played a one-on-one adventure. It's very interesting. It's an entirely different experience than a regular group or a solo game, or doing a co-op game or something. Playing for one player, it's so tailored. It's very interesting. But you get new character classes for Old School Essentials in here. You get some monster lore, and you get a one-on-one adventure. And that's true for both Night Hunter and the Book of Winter, which has a revised Ranger class and a one-on-one adventure. This one gives you the Night Hunter class itself. I think it's called the Night Hunter. Night Hunters. They're anti-werewolves, basically. It's kind of the idea here. They're immune to lycanthropy. They get dark magic, sort of. They know of and can kind of use occult magic. And they have alchemy and stuff like that. So kind of like witchers, but like gunpowder witchers, which is kind of cool. And then you had the last Dragov, which is an adventure. Again, the art in these productions from... what's the Forge of Wonders, or I forget what it's called. There's some studio, Forge Studios. I forget what the studio's called. But Andrea's work here, Hellwinter Forge of Wonders, is, I guess that just must be what it's called. Yeah, Hellwinter Forge of Wonders. The art is very striking. That's what I was about to say. The art is very striking because it's often like black and white or the equivalent on sort of a colored background, but then there'll be like a shock of red or green and like a bright neon or something like that. And it really stands out. The Book of Winter doesn't have that sort of bright pink or yellow or purple that you see, for example, in Night Hunter with some of the art. Right? Like... Let me get back up to it. Yeah, see like the dragon and the shield and the candle flame, the eyes of the Blessed Mask, the hat here. And it really does stand out. Makes it very, very interesting. This one gives you an adventure with creatures, lots of optional rules. It's dark, it's creepy. You get, yeah, again, monsters and occult lore. And to get this sort of, again, I think the way to put it would be witchers with gunpowder. And that's pretty cool. It's not a huge book, so I'm not going to go through in more detail than that. But yeah, thank you to Andrea for sending that over to me. And the same thing is true for this one, which is one that I haven't looked through super, super closely yet, the Book of Winter. But you get a revised Ranger class. That's pretty cool. You get some Ranger fellowships. That's pretty cool. Some set companions, some gear, and then an adventure, Blood on the Snow. The revised class is, I think it's good. It's not one that I would necessarily want to play myself. Rangers have never been my go-to class regardless. And this particular kind of Ranger seems, you know, like a pretty standard one. You get a companion, which is cool, and you can issue commands to that companion. And that's fun, but I think if I was going to do, yeah, Rangers has never been my go-to class. I'm much more about a either a warrior or a wizard. Then you get your adventure, which is ideally for 5th or 6th level, and it's kind of cool because you have this Ranger story. You're kind of solo out in the wilderness on your own. You do get some of the bright art in this adventure in the back as you go through the adventure here. But, you know, again, it's one of those things where if you're interested in kind of running a solo Ranger track down a person adventure with a one-on-one player, then this is a really cool book for that. And again, if you want that revised class, that's a cool thing to get. This one's 56 pages. So both the Book of Winter and Night Hunter are around 952. So again, for the fact that you get that one-on-one adventure, I think that's really worth checking out. So again, thank you to Andrea for sending that over to me. Another one that was gifted just out of the kindness of somebody's heart was Fungi of the Urwald Forest. This is by David Hill. I actually don't even know if the person who sent it to me was the creator because it was purchased for me on DriveThruRPG. So someone sent it to me and said, hey, thank you for doing your channel. Have this book on me. And so I actually don't know if it is the creator or not. But essentially what this book is just you get art of fungus, names, common names, old Waldish names, elf names, a description, and a use. And that's it. And it's 137 pages of this, which is great. I referenced this before in another video. I said, hey, everyone should check this one out. And I realized I hadn't actually done a review on it. Fungi of the Urwald Forest. I'm going to use this for Dolmenwood. I'm already putting a list of fungi together for Dolmenwood. And there's some really good ones in here. The Hog Trap. Any mortal foolish enough to consume the Hog Trap has a 5 in 6 chance to find themselves permanently turned into a boar. That's cool. The Dream Maker. Both diviners and sages are known to consume dream makers in an attempt to see the future. When eaten just before bed, the Dream Maker will allow the person to consume it to dream of 3 possible futures that night. Only one of the visions shown will be the truth. The Hazel Fancy. Aside from questionable brewing practices, the main use of Hazel Fancy is in placating boggarts. A gift of a basket full of Hazel Fancy is usually enough to buy freedom from the harassment of a boggart. That's great. Walled Garlic. Yeah. This is a great book. Again, 137 pages of fungi and art. Hollow Tops. Nighthorn. That's great. I wish it were organized by, like, I wish there was a table of contents or something like that, just with a list of the names. Otherwise, you just kind of have to flip through them yourselves, but that's fine. This is also the sort of thing where you could take out the disclaimer page and maybe the introduction page and just literally have these as an in-world book the players can find. And then they can identify fungus themselves as they come across it. That's really cool. Rather than having their characters do it, they have to do it. Getting closer to the end. Here we have, this is an RPG. So I think this is an RPG. This is called Rovers and Riches. This is one that I haven't read through in a lot of detail here. This is by Operant Game Lab. So this is an old school hack. One person's definitive way to play fantasy adventure games with your friends. Really interesting. You give your numbers. Essentially, your standard attributes are pretty standard. The standard 6, and you're going to get a couple standard classes. Well, really only fighter and rover. Oh, you get magic user, obviously clerics. Yeah, so rovers instead of thieves. So I was confused about that for a second. Equipment lists, encumbrance rules, conditions. Most of this book seems like just the rules for how to play the game. The Rabid Fantastic. There's a lot of interesting ideas in this book. Monsters, very easy stat blocks. Some general ideas about how to make a dungeon and example dungeon. Again, the same thing with towns, the same thing with wilderness. The ideas of more classes and some magic items. It's a very simple RPG. It looks very, very simple. But you get some basic, straightforward rules right away. And then you go right into it. Uses one number between 1 and 5 to represent each of your 6 attribute scores. Attribute describes characters in broad strokes. Most of the character abilities will determined by their class and equipment. Uses item slots to track equipment. 6 the character levels 1 through 6. Flattens the curve. Tracks time and watches turns and rounds. Generally does everything you can with less bookkeeping. So that's it. That's the base of the game. Again, very easy. You roll a d20 and you add your bonuses. That's how your saving throws work. Yeah. It seems cool. 3, I really like this. You get D12 tables for vanilla fantasy, grim fantasy, or fairy tale fantasy. And yeah, that's cool. So it seems really cool. Rovers Riches. Again, it's a very small RPG. I think small RPGs, that's pretty cool, right? You're just presenting your own way of playing the game. You're like, hey, this is the way we've been playing it at my table. Take it, see if it works for you. Most of us have our own games, right? Like, I don't know if there are any 2 tables that play any game the same way as any other table. Everyone plays their own game. So when we see someone else's game, I don't think it's usually because we're going to take it and play it exactly as they're playing it. I just don't. I don't think that's actually the way that we do most RPGs anymore. I don't know if anybody does that. Maybe people do it when they're first starting, but you have to ask how many people's first RPGs are these rather obscure games. like Rovers and Riches? How many people are starting off with that? And I would say, I would hazard a guess that it's none, right? That the answer is like 0 or very close to 0. I think mostly these adventures, these RPGs are put out there because it's a different rule set people might try for a session or two and say, hey, that was fun. I didn't like this, I did like that. But I really liked this idea. So I'm going to take that. And I'm going to use that in my table. I think that's what most people do when they come across a new RPG. And I think, given that as the baseline, that's kind of my understanding, Rovers and Riches is awesome. Because again, you take it, you look at it, you say, hey, this is an interesting way of taking this particular style, this particular method of character creation or level advancement. That's cool. I'm going to do that in my games. Or, yeah. So anyway, Rovers and Riches, thank you very much to Operant Game Lab for sending this over to me. I think it's definitely worth people checking out. Again, just because more RPGs is not a bad thing. I don't think I'm going to make this my game, but I also think it's cool to have in my collection. And that idea that you're going to find something in here that you go, hey, I actually really like that, and I want to do that in my game. That's awesome. This next one is very different. It's very, very different, mostly because of the philosophy that goes into it. This is one that I read a little bit into. I was sent this just a few weeks ago by a very, very friendly gentleman who said, just check it out and see what you think. And really what I like about this so much, the adventure, the system itself is pretty cool. It seems not that complicated. It's designed for children. It's designed for young people, for families, really. But the way that this game is designed, and the focus here is on helping kids, especially kids with some particular difficulties, mental conditions, as it puts your ADHD, ASD, Asperger's, learning disabilities, whatever it might be, overcome sort of social anxiety, develop social skills. That's cool. And that's something that I've noticed with RPGs generally. I had a few friends growing up who were, socially awkward or things like that. And while certainly people are still socially awkward, there is something about the RPG getting into character that lets you kind of shake off a fear of, a lack of confidence or some social awkwardness, and to actually learn how to interact and to overcome some of those social challenges that a lot of people might have. Certainly was the case for me. And so this book is leaning into that and saying, look, that's a really valuable thing that RPGs can do, is help, especially kids, develop confidence, help to, work together, develop social skills, and that's great. And so an RPG that's designed for that, I think that's really, really cool. Now, it makes a big point, right? This is not a replacement for any work that might be done, any therapy or might be needed, or caregivers, anything like that, educators or parents. It's not a replacement. But this is a really cool way of supplementing that. And again, I've noticed this in at least, I can think of 2 particular people that I have GM'd for, actually, over the years, who, from the time I started GMing them to when we basically all stopped, it was really transformative for them. And the mom of one of the players actually was like, hey, I want to thank you for running this for so many years. It was really, really important for him and the way that he developed and changed. And it was a big deal for him in developing confidence and becoming excited about leading a team and working with a team and things like that. And that was really cool. So when I saw this, I was like, hey, I want to highlight this, the adventuring family. That's really cool. So, more power to you guys for putting this out there. I hope people check this one out and support you all. Now, again, is this particular setting, or is this particular game something that I really am going to use at my table? Probably not. Just be honest there. I'm not probably going to use this. But I really support the effort behind it. And I think it's a great idea. And again, the particular rule set seems good. It doesn't seem bad at all. It just doesn't seem like it's going to take the place of something I'm going to use. It's designed for younger players and to make it pretty easy to get into. So it's good in those regards. But again, I'm not going to go through a lot of the details because it's really more of a kind of a background, right? How to use percentage dice and how to set up session 0 and all of that. It's not really a full-on everything. Now, this particular document that I have is just the overview. So you're like, oh, what are you scrolling to? It's just an overview of the thing. But you guys can check out the full thing if you'd like. And again, I highly recommend you guys support them because it seems really cool. So Adventuring Family, thank you guys for sending that over to me. Okay, we've got a couple more, just a couple more. The next thing I have is from I think it's something Peacock. What is this? Nocturnal Peacock. Yeah, Nocturnal Peacock. And they sent, basically, it's not quite a one-page, well, it is kind of a one-page dungeon. It sent me a whole package of adventures. And they're all basically like this. They're all one-page dungeons. I have a couple of them here. I have the Grove Grotto of the Mushroom Mage, which is just this. And you can see it's a one-page dungeon. Looks pretty cool, and it's got everything here. And the second page is just like maybe a VTT map of that or something. And then, like, here's another one. This is the Green Goblin Inn. Same thing. A couple pages, but the first page is really everything you need. Nocturnal Peacock, they sent me over a whole pack of these. And they seem cool. I'm always a big fan of one-page dungeons. And you guys can get a sense of it all right here, right? This is a low-level quest. You have the layout on the left, top left. You have the adventure background. You have what's happening right before you enter, and then you have the description of each of the rooms. At the bottom, you have encounters, and you have the creatures. And that's it. That's the whole kit and caboodle for every one of them. Yeah, there's not much more to say about them. Again, there's a whole pack. I think there's like 8 or 10 of these that they sent me. So thank you for that. These are definitely the sorts of things that I add into my West Marches or into my bigger games or my settings, because you can always just add more in. Like the Grove Grotto of the Mushroom Mage. You have a village that's been struck by flu. The leader disappeared looking into a cave, and you got to go find him. Pretty straightforward. Monsters, treasure, stuff to find, stuff to fight. Cool. So yeah, thank you for sending those over. Again, I think you guys should check them out. There's, again, a whole bunch, but these are just the first two that I wanted to highlight here. The next here is something by Bolwerk Games. So Bolwerk Games has been kind enough to send me not just their initial run, but a whole bunch of extra upgrade packages and things like that for their various dungeons. And the way that they work, essentially, is they have, I forget the term that they used for it. There is a term, and you can go to the DTRPG page, and it'll give you a rundown of it. But the idea here is that you have these sort of system-neutral dungeon geomorphs with descriptions of the room. So here we have the Dismal Oubliette, and you have, essentially you have a map, and it's broken down into different particular sections. And you have sort of like these, not generic, but they're sort of neutral descriptions, letters, bits of lore, pieces of art and maps, puzzles even, and then that's it. And the rest of it is kind of up to you to use if you want. It's sort of like, here's a bunch of the tools that go into making a dungeon. Here's a bunch of the stuff that you would use, like handouts and things like that, and the dungeon map itself. And that's it. And it's system neutral. Now, they also have adventures that are set in that particular dungeon. So you can also find adventures that have been written for it. And so it'll lay it out. So for example, this is the Cult of the Charnel King. It's a Shadow Dark adventure set in the Dismal Oubliette. And you have a hook, you have the domain features, and you have the different room features. And you can map those up to the actual map of the Oubliette and the different areas. And there you go. That's the different areas match up to the descriptions here. But this is just, it's not the same file, right? It's not the same product. The main product is this sort of system-neutral dungeon with a whole bunch of handouts and puzzles and things that go with it. And if you're like, hey, that's not what I want a pre-made dungeon, great. Well, then you can also get their pre-made dungeons that go with them. But if you just want the extras, if you just want the dungeon, the system-neutral dungeon, and the handouts and the puzzles and things, well, then you can do that. Here's another example. This is the Dwimmer Dark Hall. Again, you get the idea. 9 areas, 3 exits. And it has some tags, dungeon, puzzle, and weird. Yeah, quote from Thomas Dekker here. A system-neutral approach. What are dungeon domains? Hand-drawn geomorphs representing sections of dungeons, caverns, sewers, or catacombs, fleshed out with flavorful and detailed descriptions of each area, but not a full-on dungeon. And that's what you have here. You have some background information about what Dwemer Steel is. You have the dungeon hall here. And this one has some actual rooms and descriptions of those rooms. This is like a full-on dungeon here for this particular one, Dwemer Dark Hall. And the same thing here, you have Blade of Kings, which is a Shadow Dark adventure set in the Dwemer Dark Hall. And it has some other takes on those descriptions of the rooms and things like that. That's cool. So again, Bolwerk Publishing, they have a whole bunch of these, and they've been really kind to send them over to me. So again, I recommend you guys check these ones out. They're very, very interesting. All right, well, that is everything I'm going to be going through in this video. So this has been about an hour, a whole bunch of different things. Again, I'll put links below to where you can get them all. And just as a brief review, we did the Bolwerk Publishing system-neutral geomorphs with pre-made dungeons attached. We did the Nocturnal Peacock one-page dungeons, Adventuring Family, the overview. We did Rovers and Riches, Fungi of the Urwald Forest, the 2 adventures, solo adventures with this sort of interesting, unique look by Andrea Tupac Mollica. Going back, we did the Old Blood, which is that free, really interesting adventure from the Doomed Zone, set in the city with the sewers and the vampires below. Did the Bride of Sinners Crypt with the great art and the Weird Tales Game Jam design, one that I was a big fan of. You have Shadows of Camelot, which is the Arthurian setting, and Against the Cult of the Crimson Hand, which is by the same creator. It's a level 1 or 2 one-shot adventure for newer players if you want to use the less lethal rules. And then the Chateau Amongst the Stars, which is that really interesting adventure, great design, very great map for Shadow Dark RPG. It's a higher level adventure. All right, guys, this has been a bit of a longer video, but I hope it's been interesting. And again, thank you to everybody who sent me these. This was not everything that I was sent, but to those people who I didn't cover yet or haven't covered, and everybody who I covered in this adventure, again, thank you very much for supporting me and the channel, and for just reaching out and being very generous with these things. All right, that'll do it. We'll see everybody in another video.